Railways. You're watching Railways Explained. In this video, we are talking about the Japanese railways. When somebody mentions the Japanese railways, everyone thinks of bullet trains, their speed, or the so-called pushers or oshiya that literally cram people onto crowded trains. These are of course interesting details about the Japanese rail system, however, as every time, we will try to give you a bit more. A comprehensive story about these fantastic railways from many different aspects. One of the reasons for the success of the Japanese railways, which is probably one of the most sophisticated and of highest quality in the world, is the successfully implemented reform, which is often taken as an excellent example in the rail literature. Let's start with a short history, then we will talk about the reform itself, and eventually about the Japanese railways after reform. Of course, everything will be supported with many interesting facts and figures, so you'll enjoy this video. Let's begin. Japan's first railway line from Shimbashi in Tokyo to Yokohama was opened in 1872. The era of construction of railway lines was in fact one of the symbols of Japan's efforts to open the borders to formal international contacts after shogunate imposed isolation that lasted about 250 years. Railway lines in Japan were built with a track gauge of 1067 mm, which is also known as the Cape gauge. It is not known for sure why this track gauge was chosen, but one of the assumptions is that it was cheaper than the standard track width of 1435 mm. Another, in our opinion, more realistic assumption is that the construction was supervised by the British engineer Edmund Morrell, who previously had experience in the construction of Cape gauge railways on similar New Zealand terrain, and in that respect he had a significant influence over the choice. In the following decades, as in other world countries, there was a rapid development of the railway network constructed by both private individuals and the state. This was followed by the consolidation of the network, the development of transport policy, and finally the nationalization of the railway system. In the post-war recovery in 1949, the railways were reorganized and the Japanese National Railways was created as a state-owned public corporation. After 1960, there was an economic boom in Japan and the rapid development of the industry, which resulted in a new turning point in the history of Japanese railways, the creation of famous Shinkansen. We already discussed Shinkansen in one of our previous videos, but let's now remind of some details and also add some new perspectives to this topic. As you know, Japan is a country surrounded by the sea, while at the same time a large part of the land is covered in mountains. Accordingly, many densely populated cities, which are basically located about 150 kilometers from each other, are located along the coastlines. These challenging geographical characteristics are railway planners' dream, or maybe a nightmare, depending on the perspective. In any case, the old railway line between Tokyo and Osaka was the country's most heavily used line, accounting for 25% of both the passenger and freight traffic on Japanese railways. Accordingly, the JNR decided that rather than attempting to quadruple the existing tracks, it would be better to build a new route that would allow faster trains to run on a completely separate alignment. Thus was born the symbol of Japanese railways, the first Shinkansen line. The Tokaido Shinkansen, as it's officially called, was built from 1959 to 1964. Its length is 515 kilometers, and it is the world's first high-speed rail line. Of course, the Japanese railways did not stop there, but continued to build a high-speed network throughout the country. To help you understand the logic behind the development of the Shinkansen system, we have made an animation of how the network of high-speed lines in Japan has been developed over time. As you can see, after the Tokaido Shinkansen from Tokyo to Osaka, 6 new lines have been built in the following decades. Those are Sanyo Shinkansen, Joetsu Shinkansen, Tohoku Shinkansen, Hokuriku Shinkansen, Kyushu Shinkansen, and Hokkaido Shinkansen. 2 further lines, Yamagata and Akita Shinkansen, also known as the Mini Shinkansen, have also been constructed by regauging and upgrading the sections of existing lines. Without these mini Shinkansen lines, a total of 2,764.6 kilometers of the Shinkansen line has been built so far, and several sections are still under construction. In this chapter, our idea was to briefly present the history of the Japanese railways and the development of the Shinkansen system. But now we will stick to one particular year in the past, more precisely 1987, when the decision to start the reform of the Japanese railway sector has been made by the state authorities. Although the economic boom in Japan resulted in the construction of the first Shinkansen line, economic growth also allowed other modes of transport to develop rapidly in the late 1960s. Along with inefficient management of the Japanese national railways, this resulted in lost competitiveness and fast-changing market dominance. The huge organization of JNR spanned the entire country with a large number of employees, which resulted in inflexible budget formulation and a lag in satisfying customer needs. The inability to cope with major change, combined with increasing competition and pressure from other modes of transport, eventually led to the massive financial failure of JNR, which accumulated long-term debt, each year more and more. It was estimated that the JNR has accumulated a deficit of 37 trillion Japanese yen, which is equivalent to $237.8 billion at the time of the reform, which was roughly equivalent to the combined national debts of several developing countries at the time. The main problem with JNR was twofold. First, the company was too large to be managed properly, and second, it had to operate under the political influence, as evidenced by its operation of several unprofitable lines built only for political purposes, without proper compensation from the state. Thus, it was decided that the company would be split into smaller companies and with enough independence for managerial decisions, including the rights on the operation. After consideration of several options for separation, a regional subdivision according to geographical demand in such a way that around 95% of trips would be entirely within these regional boundaries was selected as best. This splitting up of JNR according to geography and functions led to the formation of the following companies: Japan Railways Group, Shinkansen Holding Corporation, Railway Communication Company, Rail Information Systems Company, Railway Technical Research Institute, and Japanese National Railways Settlement Corporation. Japan Railways Group then consists of 7 for-profit companies: Hokkaido Railway Company, East Japan Railway Company, West Japan Railway Company, Central Japan Railway Company, Shikoku Railway Company, Kyushu Railway Company, and Japan Freight Railway Company. Compared to the European way of rail reform, the so-called vertical separation under which the train operations are separated from infrastructure management, Japan has adopted a system of horizontal separation. Each JR company took responsibility for both train operation and infrastructure management within its territory. This means that the train drivers can only drive trains on their own company's rail lines. Therefore, at the border station, there should be a change of drivers. As such, a fundamental characteristic in the Japanese passenger railway operation has been this clear separation of operational responsibilities at the border station, which is believed to have contributed to smooth, efficient, and safe passenger train operation. As noted above, the JNR's long-term liabilities had accumulated to 37.1 trillion yen. To settle these liabilities, the government agency called the JNR Settlement Corporation was established and succeeded 25 trillion yen. JNR SC made efforts to refund the succeeded liabilities by means such as selling shares of JRs and selling surplus land not required for railway operations. Despite all the efforts, the JNR SC could refund only one part of liabilities, and it dissolved in 1998. As a result, about 12 trillion yen debt was transferred from JNR's long-term liabilities to the national debt. Regarding the issue of surplus personnel, the JNR employed a bit over 277,000 workers as of April 1986. It was estimated that there would be approximately 93,000 workers that need to leave JNR after reform. The government approached this issue by establishing a surplus personnel re-employment measures headquarters and enacting a special law that requested active cooperation from various national sectors to employ these people. As a result, the new railway companies re-employed 203,000 workers, while the others changed job or retired. The JNR reform predicted that the railway operation of the three passenger companies on Japan's main island Honshu would be profitable. As a result, JR Central, JR East, and JR West were progressively privatized between 1993 and 2006. They are now privately owned joint stock companies listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Privatization of the three JRs have achieved positive balance sheets despite bearing the costs of infrastructure and the burden of allocated JNR liabilities. In contrast, it was predicted that the operation of the other three passenger railway companies on Japan's smaller island would become unprofitable. Thus, to incentivize management and avoid paying annual subsidies, the government allocated management stabilization funds to these companies. At the time of the JNR reform, these companies were given huge funds to start their businesses, as you can see on the screen. We must also emphasize that in the meantime, Kyushu has also been privatized since 2016 and is now on the stock market. On the other hand, all of the shares of JR Hokkaido, JR Shikoku, and JR Freight are still owned by the Japan Railway Construction, Transport and Technology Agency, an independent administrative institution of the state. Another distinct characteristic of the JNR reform was that it was designed so that JR Freight could access all the lines owned by the passenger companies. The background to this design of the railway reform was the fact that freight rail transport had been unprofitable during the JNR's history. It was also important to achieve sustainable management of JR Freight, and thus JR Freight was released from infrastructure maintenance responsibilities to reduce its operational costs. Also, track access charges were set at relatively low levels, namely avoidable costs, aiming to shoulder only those inherent to freight rail transport. The purchase of the existing Shinkansen occurred in 1991, with the JR companies assuming ownership of the infrastructure, real estate, and rolling stock assets while paying an annual fee for 60 years. Therefore, Shinkansen lines are owned by the following companies, as you can see on the screen. As if it wasn't beautiful enough, in 1991 the Japanese government established the Japan Railway Construction Corporation, which is the government funding and infrastructure provider and owner of new high-speed lines constructed after 1991. The JR Group companies pay 30-year fixed-rate lease payments based on passenger forecast estimates on any new infrastructure, but are fully responsible for the operational and maintenance costs of those lines. This was a summary of the incredible reform of the Japanese railways, and now it's time to discuss the effects of that reform and show the performance of the mentioned railway companies. Larger railway operators in Japan are engaged not only in activities related to the operation of transport services, but rather in a wide range of others. Having in mind this is something quite unique, before we start with the transport indicators and financial performance, let's say a few words about these additional activities. For example, Japanese railway operators play a very important role in urban development and urban regeneration. In that sense, they perform activities related to the construction of commercial objects and housing. Just to name one, JR East owns the land around the railway lines, and nearly a third of its revenue comes from these additional services, which include shopping malls, offices, and hotels which JR East built on its own land. What is also important to note is the fact that this money is reinvested in the network. Also, if we look at JR East's corporate data, we will see that the business area of this company include production of beverages and liquors, sale of prepaid vouchers, memberships for sport and leisure facilities including golf and tennis clubs, establishment and management of recreation areas, physical fitness facilities, cultural facilities, preparatory schools, other educational facilities, and even movie theaters. Okay, let's now get back to the railway activities. Although the volume of passenger kilometers in Japan decreased 6% in the decade prior to reform, it improved significantly in the decade after, by more than 27%. Regarding the more recent numbers, we must say that although over 200 different companies are registered as railway operators in Japan, we will mostly speak only about those belonging to JR Group. We found some data for 2018 and we now want to share it with you. Let's start with the length of the railway network. About 30,000 kilometers of railway lines have been built in Japan so far, of which about 20,000 is under the control of the JR Group, while the rest is in the hands of the private railway operators. On the screen you can see the track length of each of JR Group companies. In the terms of the number of employees, JR Group has over 118,000 workers, whose structure you can see on this graph. What especially caught our attention was the great diversity of the number of employees per kilometer of railway line. As you can see, JR Central has 9.95 employees per kilometer of track, while Shikoku has only 2.4. As this indicator is often interpreted in the context of the working efficiency, tell us in the comments below what might be the cause of this discrepancy in your opinion. According to the Statistical Handbook of Japan, in 2018, a total of 25.3 billion passengers were transported by rail. The JR Group reported 9.6 billion, and, what is quite astonishing, 200 plus other railway companies reported 15.7 billion passengers. In total, almost 69 million passengers are transported each day in Japan. When you look at these numbers, you should not be surprised that Japan is the first country in the world in the terms of modal share of railways, with an incredible amount of 72.2% of billion passenger kilometers. If we assume that the average train occupancy in Japan is 300 people, that means that there are about 229,000 trains running in Japan every single day. Now listen closely. On the list of 20 busiest train stations in the world, all 20 are located in Japan. On the first place is Shinjuku Station in Tokyo with approximately 1.3 billion passengers per year, or about 3.6 million passengers a day. However, the complete opposite is the situation when it comes to JR freight. The total number of transported tons in Japan for 2018 was 31.6 million, with about 426 trains a day. Modal share of railways in terms of billion-ton kilometers is modest 4.7%. We must point out that as the development of the Shinkansen network grew, so did the number of passengers transported via bullet trains, as you can see on this graph. But let's not talk only about the strengths of the Japanese railways. Let's point out one weakness that was mentioned by one of our viewers. Namely, there is an increasing gap between the rail services offered in urban and rural areas. The large, private or fully privatized railway operators are concentrated in the areas where the market is propped up by the shift of the population to larger cities. In the periphery, mostly smaller railway operators, often third sector entities, partly owned by regional or local governments, operate with small profit margins or in many cases losses. With little tradition in offering railway services in concessions and allowing the larger railways to shift loss-making lines to the government, Japan will most likely see increased consolidation, closure of lines in the years to come, and the overall reduction of the rail services in the rural areas. On this graph, you can see the decline in passenger volumes on local railways. Now let's talk finances. Long story short, only Hokkaido and Shikoku operate negatively. The main reason for this is, of course, the low population density in their respective areas. If we take into account significant aging and shrinking of population in Japan, it will be quite challenging to ever make these two companies profitable. Of course, we must not forget other aspects such as punctuality and safety. As you might already guess, the importance of punctuality is deeply ingrained in Japanese culture. In that sense, the Japanese railways are among the most punctual in the world. The annual average delay per train on Tokaido Shinkansen is, believe it or not, 0.2 minutes. Today, the safety level of Japanese railways is very high, as only 0.6 accidents happen on every 1 million train kilometers, including level crossing accidents. Also, there are nearly zero on-board passengers killed per 1 year. For example, Shinkansen trains have killed 0 on-board passengers in 45 years since the opening, although they have transported 7 billion passengers and achieved 2 trillion passenger kilometers. Now, if you want your surfing and online traffic to be as safe and secure as the Shinkansen train operation, we recommend using NordVPN. Most internet users aren't even aware of the amount of surveillance, limitation, and data mining that was done with their personal information. NordVPN can help you get rid of all these problems with an easy-to-use one-for-all solution. You can mask your location or choose popular content that is not available in your country by simply changing your IP address and redirecting your connection through a remote server. In addition, NordVPN is characterized by an incredible speed that is faster than Shinkansen trains, and it is available on every major platform. Even your Android TV supports NordVPN. Railways Explained has provided you with a great discount on purchasing programs offered by NordVPN. Therefore, go to the link in the description to get a 2-year plan with a huge discount. NordVPN offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. And by doing that, you're supporting this channel. One more important aspect of Japanese railways is overseas expansion. Here we will only say that JR Central is involved as technical support in the development of the Texas high-speed rail project, which we will discuss in great detail in the next video. Of course, we are aware of what kind of railway industry Japan has and how beautiful bullet trains are, but this video is already too long. If you want us to prepare a video on Japanese bullet trains, their performance, appearance and the effects on transport system, please let us know in the comments. We can conclude this video by saying that the reform of the Japanese railways, characterized by breaking up into smaller companies and their privatization, turned out to be very successful. It improved productivity, decreased overall operating deficits, decreased fares, enabled better services to customers, and the spillover effects to other sectors. And one more thing before the end. As some of you already know, Railways Explained is now on Patreon. So if you want to support our work, you can do it directly on that platform. The link will be also in the description. Also, special thanks to all of you guys who already decided to support us there, which really means a lot. Also, don't forget to go to NordVPN link in the description and consider getting a 2-year plan with a huge discount provided by Railways Explained. And finally, this was all for today. We hope you enjoyed and learned something new about the railways of the world. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your rail-loving friends, and of course, subscribe to our channel. Until the next time, goodbye.